Morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are, and welcome to Chattering with Nicholas Vince. And this week I'm chattering with Jonas Govaerts. Hi, Jonas.
Hi.
Hi. I just wanted, before we start the interview, I just wanted to let people know that there will be no show at the end of May because I'm going to be at Bloody Weekend in Audincourt, which I've mentioned before. I also want to thank everybody who has subscribed to the channel, to the YouTube channel. 3 people have come on this week. I really am very grateful to anybody who subscribes to the channel, because basically the reason why YouTubers, apparently I'm a YouTuber of a kind, is because when you reach 500 or 1,000 subscribers on your YouTube, then you can get access to the YouTube studios in London and training and so on. So that's one of the reasons why I constantly ask people to subscribe to the channel. So yeah, cool. Jonas, how are you?
I am good. I am. I was telling you before. I'm back in Antwerp. I'm originally from Antwerp, but I spent half of my time in the UK with my girlfriend, and I'd kind of forgotten that in Belgium the bars don't close at 2. In fact, they stay open till whenever, till the people go home. So I'm getting used to that rhythm again.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I mean, it used to be when we did nightclubs, when I used to go at night, everything closed at 3 o'clock, and I mean everything closed at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, of course, everything goes on until way 10 o'clock the following day, and so. But it was really hard after, even just to get a cup of coffee in London. I'm talking about the 1980s. You just completely, everything was dead. Completely different lifestyle. Cool. All right. We'll treat you gently. So let's start talking about short stories and short films. What's your earliest short film? Which was the first short film that you ever did?
The first one that I would call really a short film that worked in school. I was in the 3rd year of school, and it was an adaptation of a R.C. Matheson story called Mobius. And it's you can find it. It's pretty rough, but I'm still happy with it. You can find it on YouTube. But the thing is, I actually stole that story from a collection. I was in a kind of a panic at the end of the school year, and I knew I couldn't write it myself, so I took this from his collection called Scars, I believe the book is called,
Okay.
and made it into a film, and then contacted him and said, "Look, I'm a student from Belgium. I stole your story." I got a mail back saying my lawyer will be in touch. This is no joke. He was like going to sue me, but he said, "Just send me the film, and we'll talk about it." And he liked it so much that he said, "Okay, you won't be sued. In fact, you can pick any story you want from my collection for the same budget price, basically." I think it was about 500 euros. And since then, I've made another RC adaptation called Abused. And I'm planning to shoot one, hopefully, this summer from his new collection. So we've kind of built a relationship through my thievery.
Yes, I don't recommend this as a starting point or anybody who's starting out. This is definitely not a good way to start the thing. What, so that you were studying film studies, you were studying filmmaking when you said your 3rd year? Oh, can you hear me?
I can. Yes, I went to film school in Brussels, and I think, but you're right. It's not a recommend. I wouldn't recommend stealing other people's stories. But what did distinguish me from my classmates is that they all wanted to write their own stuff, and I had been reading a lot of stuff, and like R.C. Matheson, like Clive Barker, so I became aware that adapting is actually what I was better at than writing myself. So that was a good thing to learn at that age, because all my classmates were doing their own very depressing stories about suicide in Brussels and stuff, and I wanted to have some colorful horror going on. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. And we've already started getting, we've already had one question come in. And this will possibly come into that theme. This is from a gentleman called Hans. His Twitter name is Hans Sikan. Can you please explain your appreciation of Vampiros Lesbos, or Jesus, or Jesus Franco's film in general?
I think I know who this this Hans is. I think I forced him and a friend to sit through just Franco's masterpiece, one of his many masterpieces, Vampiros Lesbos. Yeah, I think for the uninitiated, Franco is a bit of a hard thing to swallow, but I get intoxicated by that kind of cinema, but it's not for everyone.
Okay, so I've not seen Vampiros Lesbos. I've seen there's a terrible British film called Lesbian Vampire Killers.
Yes.
Yeah, with James Corden, who's done great things in the States. He's he's taken over not Saturday Night Live. He's got the Tonight Show, and is doing very, very well. And there's obviously a very talented guy, but this. Do not worry about Lesbian Vampire. It was given away free by Apple on iTunes one Christmas. Is the only reason I watched it. And yeah, just not good. But for those of us like me who don't really know Jesus Franco's films, okay, you've never seen the movie. Tell us what it is about the movies that you like.
Oh, I mean, you couldn't explain a Jesus Franco movie really, and if you did, it would be something very banal. But it's all about the atmosphere and the beautiful women on display, of course. But he has, I mean, I see his work as one big film. He's made over 200 films, which they all flow into each other. I mean, there's no real mastery behind it. It's just he was such a weird filmmaker who was into sexploitation, and yeah, once you get in it, it's a rabbit hole, and you see people coming back, scenes coming back. He's reusing sets. It's a trip, but you do need a lot of free time to delve into Franco's catalog.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. I have a guide. There's a book by Mr. Stephen Trower. I believe you know him. Or he's a writer. He's also living in London. He wrote an excellent book called he wrote a book on Fulci called Beyond Terror, about the films of Lucio Fulci. He also did Nightmare USA, about a couple of self-funded. I mean, it's a collection of very hard to find the stories behind films like Don't Go Into the House, and yeah, very weird. So he just released a book on Franco, and that's why I'm kind of delving into Franco. But yeah, I mean, I have 250 more films to see of Franco that I haven't seen.
I missed the name of the guy who wrote the book, Stephen
Trower.
Stephen Trower. I probably should, and if he's watching, I'm just really embarrassed and say not off the top of my head, but I'm sure I probably do. Yeah, it's just it's the heat over here. It's 24 degrees. We've been out most of the sunshine, and it's just getting to my stuff. Okay, cool. All right, so. Starting with short films, you find yourself strong. How do you approach that? Okay, so you're adapting a short story. How do you start? Obviously, you start with a short story. Do you go through and highlight sections? You think, okay, that's a piece of dialogue I should use, or what's your approach to adapting a short story?
I kind of feel it's right for me when the images come by themselves, and I will work. I will probably do sketches before I write anything down as a script in any kind of script form. So if a story speaks to me visually, that's the first thing I'll do is sketch out what to me are iconic scenes or the angles that I need. That if a story does that to me and I get excited about it visually, then I know it's the right kind of story. And the good thing about R.C. Matheson's work is that it's so cinematic. You immediately can visualize it. He has a kind of prose that is somewhere in between fiction, and you can tell he's also a scriptwriter, because it's a weird mixture. Very concise, precise writing, and still with very sparse words. He opens up ideas in your head, so he doesn't need a lot of words to conjure a lot of. I'm not expressing myself right. You can feel you can feel that he's he works in Hollywood, so basically he's done the work for you, is what I'm trying to say. If you read a short story of his, it's pretty much the script already. Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned that you will sketch out ideas. Do you draw your own storyboards?
I do. In fact, when I was younger, people, my family, all assumed that I was going to be a comic book artist because I was always drawing. But unfortunately, I never bothered to learn perspective or anything. So people on sets not a lot of people seem to storyboard in Belgium, and when they see my doodles, they're like, okay, I don't know how this is going to help us, but you obviously know what you want to do here.
That's interesting. So in Belgium, not many storyboards. I've just kind of assumed worldwide most people use storyboards. So
no, maybe I'm just naive, and I don't know a lot of people who use them, but I'm sure people do. I'm now insulting my fellow countrymen who probably are great artists. But when I came to set on the last thing I did, people were surprised that I was so prepared that I had everything sketched out.
That's interesting. So if people don't have storyboards, when you're working with people without storyboards, basically you just have a shot list to work from in that case. Yeah. Okay. And okay, so done a short story film. You did another short film about, and I don't have the name in front of me, cats, something about
of cats and women. It's
of cats and women. Thank you.
Yeah.
Duh. Tell me about Cats and Women. How did that come about?
That was a story that I had found even earlier in a short story collection by a Scottish writer named Laura Hurd. And again, I was out of film school already when I made that, but I had found that story in film school, and it's just a very nasty story about revenge and jealousy, basically. And that's when I was getting into Hitchcock, and I loved his way of color coding, and in that movie I took that very far, like, because it's all about jealousy. The whole world is green and her dress is green until the blood starts flowing, and then there's red in the mix. But that was a short film that was to me, it was really a style exercise. I loved the story. It was a very simple story, but that's where I started developing something of what I would call, a style, I guess, as a director.
Interesting. So this is where you're saying that when we're talking about color and Hitchcock, you're saying that the palette for a particular movie, he will emphasize particular colors to help convey what the story he's trying to tell, obviously.
Yeah, and it's only it's usually has to do with subconscious stuff, which is very fascinating. Like in Vertigo, he would give the lead actress, who was a blonde, but I'm blanking on her name now, which is pretty bad for a film student. But she has blonde hair,
yep,
and a gray coat that was specifically designed for her. And the reason he did that was because those two colors in the human brain, they don't go together. So whenever she's on screen in that coat, you feel that something's off, and that's what he was trying to achieve. And then I delved into like color symbolism, and Hitchcock is a master of that. And it's something you can, or the red in Don't Look Now, the jacket of the little girl, all these things. When you make a film, you can control every element, and some people don't take advantage, but he certainly did, and that's what I'm trying to learn as well.
Very interesting. Oh, okay. I need to look up this more on Hitchcock. Have you seen, and I don't know if you come across the book, the Francois Truffaut Hitchcock interviews?
I believe there was a documentary made about those interviews, and it was recently in the cinema in London, but I missed it.
It's on iTunes now. It's available on iTunes. Yeah, it's literally, it's based, like, I haven't got my copy to hand, which it's always in my bedroom. It's beside my bed. I know. This is my second copy of it. It's absolutely fascinating. I think I've mentioned it on the show before, but it's Francois Truffaut interviewing Hitchcock. And at the time, Hitchcock really wasn't that popular, but he goes through every single Hitchcock film as a filmmaker, and they just have this conversation. The book is absolutely fascinating. The documentary is really fascinating as well. because it's about somebody at the end of their career being interviewed by somebody at the beginning of the career, and the different, the different ways. And it more or less came about was because there were cinemas in Paris which showed nothing but Hitchcock films. Yeah, no, I recommend it. Both the book. Make sure you get the most recent. The book is about this big. I mean, I used to have, and it's got lots of stills. The original one I had got, they cut it down and they were cutting off bits of the pages and so on, so you didn't get all the stills. Massively, yeah, really, really. Documentary is absolutely fascinating. Massively see that. Okay, so I like your friend Hans because he keeps on prompting me just before I'm about to ask you a question with a question. He says, I'm a big fan of Monster. Can you talk about how that came about and what were your main influences when making it?
He's not just a big fan of Monster. I think he's the only fan of Monster. And he's it's something I did for Belgian TV. And basically, what we were doing is, I'm never aware of. I'll watch anything, so I've seen a lot of very schlocky things, and I naively think that people like the things I like. So that was about. It was a parody show about, co-written with a good friend of mine who's a theater maker, and it was basically a group of an Ed Wood-like group of filmmakers and actors. Every episode they would make a movie, and our crew would follow them. They'd make a movie in another genre, but they were completely talentless. So it was a zombie film or a sexploitation film. And at the end, you saw the trailer of what was supposedly that movie, and we thought it was hilarious. It was like, not the very obscure things, but obviously the Belgian public was completely flabbergasted, and we weren't. The second season was never greenlit, let's say that.
Right, okay. But this was broadcast on Belgian TV.
It was, yeah. I work. I'm the house director of a television channel called Acht. That's 8, which is it's a small channel, but they give me a lot of freedom, and that was one of the things. It was one of the funnest things I ever did, but it's quite obscure.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about TV work a little bit later on. Interesting questions coming from Joe. We were talking about color in film for Hitchcock. Joe asks, how importantly do you value music in cinema, and what movie soundtrack do you enjoy the most? So it's 2 questions. How do you work with music in film and TV, and is there a particular soundtrack that you really enjoy?
Well, the obvious answer is Carpenter. I think what John Carpenter does for horror, to me, that has become the sound of horror in general, basically, and that's what I try to do on Cub. And I noticed that a lot of filmmakers of my generation, we all seem to go back to that electronic sound of that very minimalistic retro sound that John Carpenter used to produce for his movies. But it's fascinating because he did it because he didn't have money, and he just played along with the films as they played, and he was the only musician, so he only had to pay himself, I guess, or not pay anyone. So the fact that it's so minimal, to me, that it's the height of suspense. Obviously, I'm watching a lot of Italian giallos lately because I have some free time, and it seems like Morricone did every film in the 70s. Every film I find has an incredible Morricone score, and usually the films aren't that good, or they I mean, the filmmaking is a bit dubious, but the scores are always fantastic. So he was unstoppable back then. It's really, I'm rediscovering Morricone. I knew his big stuff, obviously, but all those giallos he did in the 70s, it's incredible.
Morricone is one of my. I recently, again, I've mentioned on the show before that I was asked to do a mixtape, a playlist, which is going to go online on Mixcloud later this month. And as an excuse, I got all my albums and got myself a record player, and I'd forgotten I got a double album of Morricone and Battle for Algiers. uh, obviously all the spaghetti western stuff as well. Morricone, he's still going. He's still composing, and composing not just for TV and film and so on, but for church music and so on. He's still extraordinarily prolific. Unless, of course, he's died recently, and I've missed that. But
no. He's alive. He played in Belgium, even. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's. I think he's in his 80s now.
Yes. Yeah. His last big thing was obviously he provided some new score for Tarantino's The Hateful Eight, and
right.
Very interestingly, there's a track in there which is actually was an unused song from The Thing. So you suddenly get this keyboard sounding drone coming in, and you recognize, like, okay, this was supposed to be in The Thing, and they use it in The Hateful Eight, which was a very weird but clever device.
Ah, interesting. Oh, very, very interesting. Okay, cool. So you mentioned Cub in passing. So for those of people who've not had the chance to watch Cub, can you just talk us a little, without giving away too much for anybody who hasn't watched it yet, trying to avoid spoilers? Tell us about Cub. What is Cub?
Cub is my first feature, and it's a very it's a homage both to my scouting days. I loved being in the Scouts when I was younger, and a homage to the first movies that I didn't even see them back then, but my scout leaders would often mention movies like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Terminator. But my parents didn't allow me to watch those things. So in my tent, I was lying awake at night on camp, imagining those horrors taking place outside of the in the woods around me, and that's basically where it came from. And I was very surprised that there had been no scout horror, because it's such a logical thing to do, to take a group of kids, put them in the woods. But there, apparently it's the first movie with scouts in them, a horror movie with scouts in them. So accidentally I pioneered something.
Yes, because recently I just saw it. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but there's the Scouting Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse. I haven't. Have you seen that?
No, not yet. No, but we were first.
Yeah. Okay, so this kind of leads on to a question from Julien Delattre. Was it difficult to direct Cub with kids, and was there scheduling difficulties as opposed to working with adults?
You dropped out for a second, but I think okay. I got the question. I think I got lucky that in Belgium the laws are pretty lenient. I think we got away with a lot of stuff. Those kids were on set for way longer than they were legally allowed to, I think. Especially our lead, who was 13 at the time, Maurice, the lead of Cub. He's a 13-year-old boy, and he's in basically every shot. So I don't know what kind of deal the producers made with his parents and our government, but I got away with a lot of stuff. So yeah, I don't think I could do such a thing in America or England even. Just the laws working with children. Not that there was any danger, but the hours on set are just we didn't have any people coming to check in on us, basically.
Right. And how did you presumably, was this the first time you worked with children?
Yeah, and it was surprisingly, it was like I thought that was going to be the hardest thing to do, but it turned out that the other thing you're not supposed to do, I don't know who said it, but don't shoot on water, don't shoot with animals, and don't shoot with kids, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, unfortunately, too, we have a dog who has a pivotal part in the story, and actually we had the most trouble was trying to direct that stupid dog. So the children were actually a dream to work with.
So, and the story, the script for Cub, was that your story, or again an adaptation, or did you write this?
I came up with the core concept, let's say, and then my producer, who had produced Of Cats and Women, Peter de Macht, his name is, he said, I have a suggestion for you. It was another filmmaker who was actually a director of romantic comedies called Roel Mondelaars. He said he's very good at structure and story. Maybe you two guys can cook something up together. So I basically pitched all my wild ideas. The film is full of traps, and that kind of stuff. And together we knitted into a whole a story that actually worked. So I had a lot of loose ideas going back to my days as a scout. So when I was 12, like I think some images are literally 20 years old, and I finally got to put them in a movie. But it was together with Rule that it came together as a story.
Interesting. I think one of the things I really like about the film is the fact that it really feels very naturalistic. It really feels that this is how it must be, to be in Cub Scouts and so on. And so you got the script together. Which software did you use to write Cub?
I think I had mastered Final Draft by then, so yeah.
Right. Yeah. And obviously you're collaborating on the script. Did you just pass files backwards and forwards, or did you print it out and make notes, or how did you collaborate?
It's becoming quite hazy because it's a while ago, but I remember I would travel to Brussels, that's where Rule lives. We'd sit at the table. I think I did we did a lot of talking back and forth. He would make notes, and then I'd go back home, and that was kind of a treatment, and I'd go back and write the full scene, send that to him, and work like that. So, but we spent a lot of hours just talking and making little notes, figuring the story out. So it wasn't behind a typewriter or anything. It was really conversations that led to the script. And I think I did on my own. I did from that rough base that we had. I did a first draft of the script by myself.
Okay, and then and presumably, in fact, you've shown me some storyboards. Were the storyboards that you showed me, are those the storyboards that you drew?
No, that was actually concept art to help get the film funded.
Okay.
That was a very talented, a very talented friend of mine called Gerard Leijzen, and I'd done stuff with him before. When I was in a band, he did the first album cover, so I knew him through that. And I just described scenes to him, and he put together some what I thought would become iconic images from the film, and we used that to give the Flemish Film Fund kind of a mood board, basically. So that's what you've seen. You haven't seen my horrible doodles.
They didn't look like horrible doodles, which is why I wanted to double check. Okay, so you had the script together. Were you getting funding at the same time as you were writing the script? Were you writing it? Had you already got funding based on the ideas at that stage?
Well, I wasn't aware how slow we are in Belgium, actually, because we go, the fact that we have something called the Flemish Film Fund, it goes in three stages, basically. You can get funding for script. So basically you hand in a treatment, and if it's approved, then you get money to complete your script. Then it goes into the second phase of development. No, there's one in between, but I'm forgetting what it's called. So just to get the team together, and then the third phase is, I mean, you need to pass the exam every time. So some people don't get past stage 1 or 2 or 3, but once it's going, and it's budget that we had. I didn't know how. I mean, I'm talking to filmmakers from all over the world, and I was quite privileged, and I didn't even know it actually with Cup.
Right. Okay. So, and it sounds actually fairly straightforward. I think in the UK you can get similarly. There are funds. There's lots of different funds available. Well, not lots of different funds available at all. In fact, a friend of mine who went to a pitch meeting for one of the films, she said it would have been great if I was a middle-aged white man. Otherwise, you don't stand a chance for getting funding. So you got funding, you got your script done, and so on. One of the things you mentioned, all these traps and so on, and these mechanical things, these traps in the woods. Who put those together? How did you get those done?
That was for some reason. No, I know why. I remember seeing some films. One of my early discoveries was a Japanese film called Evil Dead Trap, which had nothing to do with Evil Dead, but it had traps. It was made in the 80s. Had a great soundtrack too. That's what I remember. And it was basically very vicious traps, and there was no story whatsoever, but the traps and the music were great. So, but the one thing that I didn't like about that film is that the traps made no sense. So in my head, they had to make sense. And every trap is basically an animal trap retooled for humans. So in the opening scene, we get a variation. I won't spoil too much, but apparently some hunters use like a light box that they put into the forest, and the rabbits will come sit before that light box, so you can just shoot them while they're sitting there. So I thought about those kind of traps, like what would work on a human? How can you fool a human in the forest? So that's where the ideas came from for the traps. And I had a certain guy that's actually not in film. He's a bit of an inventor that I worked with before on music videos. And I said, like, if these traps were, if someone was to make them for real, how would they work? And so actually what you see is they were all supposedly live. They could work in real life. That's what I'm trying to say. Often in a film like Saw or something, with a few quick cuts, you can suggest things are happening or mechanics are happening, but you're not quite sure what's happening. And I wanted to avoid that. I wanted to show people that these could be real. To make it a bit scarier.
Yeah, they're vicious. They look, and they have this one. Yeah, because you know, again, not to give this, but you're in the middle of a forest, and there is something very organic or homemade. You know, these aren't things produced in a factory somewhere. These are things that are put together, and have that feel about it. We'll come back to Cub a little bit later on. You mentioned a couple of times you've done music videos. Is that right?
Just a few, but I'm not particularly good at those because you need to put the band in there. It's usually what the band asks, and I think one thing that I haven't found a way to make a band playing interesting. It's always the same kind of shots. There's even less money than on short films, so it's becoming less and less of an attractive thing to me because, you know, I have a lot of friends in music, but the budgets are just ridiculous. I mean, they want. There are more creative people out there than me who can make 500 euros work, but as I get a little bit older, it's becoming harder and harder to come up with cheap ideas that are still worth it. So I did a few. There's one actually on the British Cup DVD that I'm very proud of, for a song called the band is called Dead Sets, and the song is called 1 Hour. And I'm actually quite happy with that. And there's a Cub Scout in that for no reason whatsoever.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I remember. I think you showed me a couple of your music videos when we first met. Funnily enough, with R.C. Matheson at World Fantasy Convention in Brighton 2-3 years ago. Cub, you're in the forest. What was your budget for Cub eventually?
I think we had about 2.5 million to play with, which for a debut is amazing. We had about 36 shooting days as well, and what I hear now from American filmmakers that that kind of budget is kind of gone for horror in America. You're either making a movie for under $1 million, or you're making a studio picture for like, you know, what the last big one was, I guess, Crimson Peak. But that kind of middle budget is gone. So the fact that I got it made in Belgium is actually a rarity. So I feel very lucky.
It's interesting. Do you see your future career as being in Belgium or in the UK or hopefully in America? Where would you want to end up in that case?
It is interesting because I've been offered another horror-ish film. It would be a folk horror comic book adaptation, actually, and again, it has that kind of budget. So that would be in Flemish, and I'd love to do it. But the next script I've written is actually in English and could only be shot with American or British actors. So there is an ambition there, but I don't know if they want me over there. But we'll see. It's now in Cannes, that project, and we'll see if people are interested.
Right. Okay, so that is a very interesting point. For those who don't know, Cub is filmed in Flemish and it's subtitled. When you write, do you write in Flemish or do you write in English, or does it just depend on the product, the film that you're writing?
Well, yeah, just before we went live, I told you about, I woke up from an operation speaking in English. I don't know why. I was talking to the nurses, And I've always been an Anglophile, I guess. From a young age, I was reading in English a lot. And my girlfriend is from Ireland, actually. So I spend a lot of my time speaking English. And when I now do like a music video script, I will do it in English, actually, which sounds a bit pretentious, but that's the language I go to, actually, yeah.
It kind of makes sense to me that, you know, in music videos, generally speaking, music is shot in English so that they can get to the American market. It's the same with the Eurovision, etc. I remember speaking to a Swedish guy I met when I was in, this is back when I was in drama school, and this is the first time I'd really encountered a country where that, you know, they obviously spoke Swedish and English, and everybody speaks English there. He said that sometimes when he's having to deal with a problem, if he can't work it out in Swedish, then he'll think about the same issue in English, just to do use a different part of his brain, basically.
Okay.
I wish I had that skill. I just have to try and sort stuff out in English, you know. Okay, so the other thing that I noticed, so you're a €2.5 million. That's about £2 million. It's probably around, yeah, it's around about $2.5 million, a little bit more. It's probably about, yeah, nigh on $3 million. You've got €2.5 million. That's a really big budget. And you had 36 days filming. I'm trying to do my maths. That's over 35. Do you shoot 5 days a week when you're shooting?
I have a very bad memory, but yeah, we shot for a whole summer and not on the weekends, but basically, yeah, we did 5 days a week. Yeah. With kids.
With kids.
Which is illegal, I think.
Yeah. And you wouldn't do it again.
No, never.
No, you'd never do that again. Do you, so and obviously there was some CGI, because on the DVD extra of the DVD you did CGI. What do you think about, you obviously went to, you talked about the engineering of the traps that are in the forest. This is obviously very important to you, if I've understood, to make things as realistic as possible. Do you ever, have you got any plans or any thoughts of doing something that would rely heavily on CGI in order to make the effects, or would you prefer to do, I'm thinking in terms of makeup and monsters and things like that, would you prefer to do CGI or would you prefer to do practical effects?
I think I even on Cup I went practical as much as I could, and the few things I don't like when I look back at the film are some things in the CGI. Not that they didn't do a good job, but it's just something I can't get over. So I think very few directors working today, know how to work with CGI. It's kind of I think the one guy who's really a master at it is Guillermo del Toro, I'd say, because he mixes animatronics and CGI so well. And I've learned from the Mad Max audio commentary that those guys were saying, the effects guys were saying, even if you're going to use CGI, give us something live on set so we have a reference. So I just did a TV show with a lot of effects and CGI, but I always made sure we had some live effect on set that they could either replicate or use as a base to start from. So it's tricky. I would feel very uncomfortable to just shoot green screen or something. I like to see it before my eyes, so I know what it's gonna be like on screen. Yeah, I'm not a big fan, but some things are only are becoming much easier because of CGI. But I'd use it very sparingly myself.
Okay, so it's interesting, and I know, you know, speaking as an actor, obviously it's so much nicer if you've got something, particularly if you're working in makeup. You know, if somebody's supposed to be working in makeup effects, it's I've only really done purely CGI to kind of really try and imagine exactly, because I think it's, particularly if you're acting with other people, it's easier. Because you've got and I appreciate, you know, you have green balloons on sticks to give you your eye line and your focus, etc. But if you've got a practical thing in front of you, it is so much, you know, that both of you are reacting to the same image you've got going on in your head. Hans has just put in another question, but I'm going to come to you in a few moments, Hans, because I'm interested in, you say that you're a house director for TV, and obviously you've worked in both film and TV. What do you think are the main differences in working between film and TV? I presume that Carb incidentally was shot digital rather than film. Is that correct?
Wait, you dropped out. You dropped out
I
there.
dropped. Okay. So I was asking the difference between film, working in TV programs and working on film, feature films. And I presume Cub is shot on digital camera.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. Yeah, everything I've been shooting the last few years was. I don't think people shoot on film anymore. No producer will let you shoot on film because it's become too expensive, unfortunately. But I did try with Cub. I did try to at least hold on to my 80s nostalgia by getting the kind of lenses that John Carpenter used, and it was the actual set. I'm bragging now. It was the actual set from Inglorious Bastards, not just the same set, but the actual set that they shot that movie on. And that doesn't make my movie great instantly, but at least I can say it was shot on the same lenses. So it's the Panavision set that Tarantino used. So, but it was we shot on the Alexa digital, yeah, which is enormously handy because your dailies are right there. I mean, the pros and cons. I talked a lot with my camera about it, but he says there's no difference anymore, and he's a photographer, so he loves the texture of film, but he says really, why would you go back to film? Digital is now so good that you can get the same atmosphere, and it's just cheaper. So I'm afraid those days are over.
It's interesting. We say this, but I know that Frankenstein created Bikers, which features or stars Tristan Risk and Lawrence Harvey, who've both been on the show. That is film. That I think is 35 mil. Was shot in, and this was only shot last year. So people are still doing it, but you know, technically, I completely understand what it is you're saying. So the question from Hans is: as a cinephile, which younger modern directors have you checked out lately that you're excited about? So are there any young up and coming filmmakers that you could particularly recommend?
I'm very impressed by a man called Jeremy Saulnier. He made 3 movies. His first one is very hard to find. That was called Murder Party, which was a bit of a... No one saw that one, but his second one was called Blue Ruin, which was like a revenge story put on its head, basically. It was a kind of a Death Wish story, but the guy doing the revenging was completely and utterly incapable of doing it morally and technically. So it was a very interesting film. And he now has a new movie out called Green Room, which for my money is like my favorite film of this year. I think he does very interesting things with exploitation cinema.
And Green Room has got Patrick Stewart in it, and if I got this is the one where the band meets white supremacists. Is that right?
Yeah. Basically, they're a young punk band on the road. They take one more gig because they need the money, and it's in front of it's a Nazi group. So it's a Nazi location. So they're told keep your head low, and the first thing they do is play a cover of Dead Kennedy's song "Nazi Punks Fuck Off." So that's not a good start. And then they witness a murder in the green room, and basically it becomes a trapped. It's very Assault on Precinct 13 like, but the tension is great. The characters are great. I think he's a very talented filmmaker who knows his stuff. And another one that I like, it's very different, but is Peter Strickland, who also takes familiar genres and does something very. I mean, I don't know if you've seen. What is Peter Strickland did a film last year. What was it called? Do you remember?
I know the name. I can't. I'm just going to bring up. Let me just bring up Peter Strickland's IMDb page. Strickland.
The Duke of Burgundy. The Duke of Burgundy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The Duke of Burgundy. Okay. Yeah, came out a couple of years ago. It's 2014. Yeah, I've not seen it.
It is quite. It's a big love letter to Jess Franco, but it's not what you expect. It has the aesthetic of a Jess Franco movie, but basically it's a very touching story about an S&M relationship in a village that seems to consist only of women. I don't know how he got it, how he got it made with that kind of weird pitch, but it's beautiful and utterly beautiful.
Oh, okay, okay. And you talked about Heads Will Roll is the project that's your producer is currently at Cannes, and you're trying to seeking funding for that. But you're also working on Tabula Rasa for your TV channel. Is that right?
It's not for that TV channel. It's for a bigger channel actually. And I was brought in. That was written by a very talented writer called Malin Rosin. And it was the first time, no, not the first time, but it was a dual direction. So I did a bit, I did the past storyline, someone else did the present storyline. And it was unusual because also the lead actress, she was also a co-writer. So there was a lot of opinions on that set. And that was a big challenge for me because, you know, all directors are egomaniacs. And there was a lot of compromise to be made and questions to be answered. But the reason I did it is it was full of they asked me because they saw a Cub, and it has a bit of a Twin Peaks vibe going on. There's a lot of dream sequences and hallucinations and nightmares, and I love doing that kind of stuff. And there was for a Flemish series, there was a surprising amount of money, so that was fun to do. It was hard work because the main difference between film and TV is really time. I wasn't prepared for on a film, and the first thing I did was a film. You at least have time to get the scenes right, but with TV you have to work so fast that you sometimes you don't even know if you. So I needed to get used to that rhythm. But looking back, we're starting editing soon. I think I'm confident we do have it, but I wasn't used to that rhythm, especially because there was still so much discussion on set between the people making it.
That is interesting, and this is obviously going to be for Belgian TV. And possibly you're saying possibly for German TV.
Yeah, it's co-funded by the ZDF, so they had a little bit. It was weird because there was extra money coming in as we were shooting. We were also suggesting certain things in the script that should be changed. So we were shooting scenes that we weren't in our heads didn't work sometimes, or it was a big puzzle. But yeah, I mean, luckily Malin knew what she was doing. The writer, she was on set every day, which is also very unusual. But I was very grateful for that. So she kept a lookout over the whole project. So I'm confident it's all going to be okay.
This is interesting because when we talked about this earlier on, and I was talking over with Craig, my husband, and he was thinking, you know, who gets to coordinate then if you've got two directors, you've got these interlinking storylines. So your writer is on set. So I presume. So are the three of you going to sit in the editing room with the editor to bring this all together, or will you? How is that all going to be brought together?
Well, me and the other director were never on set together, but we did work with the two same DOPs. So luckily, the guys who were shooting, they knew what the style was. We did decide on a shooting style, and we didn't, do something very different. The cameraman would be the true line for the visual style, but then I'm sure Malin is going to be in the editing room with me every day, and I'm sure we're going to fight, but I also am sure that at the end of the day she'll be right about most things. So the concept of showrunner is very new in Belgium, so to be that hands-on is actually quite rare in Belgium, to have someone who has a vision like that, and is I mean, she's an extraordinary woman, I have to say. So and she has her last series that she did is I think being remade by the Americans now. She's very ambitious and talented, so I hope to work with her again.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so this is Tabula Rasa. We talked a little bit about Cub. One of the other things, kind of folding back a bit, is you mentioned Clive Barker, and I know that one project you would really like to do is Madonna. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're hoping to achieve with that, or what you would like to do?
Wait, you dropped out again. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I heard.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Clive Barker and Madonna.
Aha.
Sorry, tell us, because this is from the Madonna short story from the Books of Blood. Is that right?
Yes, of all the Clive Barker stories, that's the one that always haunted me, and it's not even a very famous one. It's not as famous as the Hellraiser stories, or there are more famous Book of Blood stories. But I think I read it at an age where, yeah, the fact of these alluring women in a bathhouse, it always stuck with me, and it's one I think that really, and what you were saying, if that was the Madonna in the story is a kind of divine creature, it's a monster, and I always imagined if I ever get to do that story, which I hope to do, but we'll see, to do that completely practical would be wonderful. Yeah, to bring that story to life. But it's my favorite Barker story, and I always go back to it.
Okay, cool.
And
All
it's
right.
also one, like much like Candyman, that there's an opportunity there to build on the world that's in the story, because it's not very long, but you can feel like you can flesh out a few things and make it into a. I mean, it would survive going to feature length, I'd say.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. So I'm just going to invite some. I'm hoping that somebody else may be able to join us. Julian has asked to be able to come and join us live.
Yeah.
So that invitation has been posted, Julian, and we'll talk about that. So you're about to go into editing Tabula Rasa. What else are you working on at the moment, or what else would you like to be working on at the moment?
Well, I had a very interesting meeting last week. I mentioned it briefly. There's a cult comic book from the 80s. It's called Silence, but I think with the new Scorsese movie coming out, we should probably go for another title. But it's basically a folk horror tale set in the 70s in rural Belgium, and I was very honored that they were thinking of me to direct it. But it would be a modest film, but I adore films like Blood on Satan's Claw and The Wicker Man. Obviously, it's a small genre. The Witch recently was another one, but if we bring Belgian horror genre, that would be that's something I would love to do.
Right. Okay, Julian, just in case, I have invited you via, sometimes Google can take a while for things to actually come on, but the invitation has been posted. Let me see what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something. I'm going to ask Craig to copy and paste something. Let me just see if we can get Julian on this way. Craig, I've just messaged you a link. If you could paste that onto the Hangout, just so that Julian could hopefully be able to come and join us. So, which do you prefer doing? Is it film or TV?
Definitely film. Yeah, TV. I mean, I was lucky that I was brought on to Tabula Rasa because it's very rare that it's well written, but still, there's something about TV. I feel there's less room for atmosphere. It seems people who watch TV. I don't watch a lot of TV. I watch a lot of film, and what I love about film is that there's nothing else. How should I say it? It can be like a Jess Franco movie. If you want a film just to be about atmosphere, it can be that, and if you do it well, it's valid. While TV, there's always like it's much more plotty, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, and I'm less interested in that as a fan than an experience, and I'd rather have an experience with a film than with a television show. Even though I've obviously seen Breaking Bad and stuff like that, but there's really. But that's why I am interested in that as a fan than an experience, and I'd rather have an experience with a film than with a television show. Even though I've obviously seen Breaking Bad and stuff like that, but
right.
There's really. But that's
hello.
I guess
I'd rather have an experience with a film than with a television show. Even though I've obviously seen Breaking Bad and stuff like that. But,
okay, we're getting.
Hello.
Hi, Julian. We're getting some feedback, Julian. But what's your question? for what's your question, Julian?
Well, I just wanted to say that I've met Jonas last year at Fantastic Art in France, and it's where I met him, and it was awesome to watch the movie Cub with him. I mean, I was not sitting next to him, but it was in the same auditorium where we watched the movie, and then after the movie, I talked to him a little bit. Do you remember that, Jonas?
I do.
And I was happy to see the movie because I don't see much Belgian movies. I'm actually sort of, I think, 20% from Belgium, but I don't. I watch a lot of foreign language movies, and there is not a lot of movies from Belgium that are so popular. I mean, for me, in every single movies I watch, as a indie sort of a small local filmmaker myself. I mean, through Indiegogo and Kickstarter in the U.S. And watching a movie like Cub, I was so amazed by how every shot was in my mind. I could see you, Jonas, doing the storyboard yourself, or and every single actors work perfectly the flow of the story. The traps made me think of the some of the traps that you can actually make another, maybe a Saw movie, directing a Saw movie. I could see you doing it, and using the music and all the actors and the CGI effect or the practical. Me, I prefer practical effects.
Okay.
And but yeah, I mean, I was happy. I loved the movie, and I told all my friends to watch it.
Thank you so much.
Julian, you've already asked a couple of, did you have another question you wanted to ask before I move on to another question?
Okay, so Jonas, what do you see the future? Do you see another Cub? Do you see maybe in another platform like a TV show, or maybe a comic book or graphic novel?
I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead, Vincent. Nicholas, sorry.
It's okay. So I don't know if you got the question, but basically the question Julian is asking is, do you see a future for Cub in either a sequel or a comic book form or anything else happening with Cub?
It's funny because I had a few meetings after Cub. I had a few meetings with American people, like the people from Blumhouse and stuff like that. And in the beginning, when the people heard about the movie, they were like, "Oh, this is gonna get remade," and I was like, "We'll see about that." And then, of course, when they actually saw it, and they were children of 12 who do not all survive, and there's stuff happening with a dog that's not very PG. And they were like, "Yeah, we can't remake this actually, unless you change the ending and you make the kids 16 or 18, and then it's a different movie." But I stuck to my guns while making it. But yeah, I kind of killed my own remake, I guess. But yeah, people, I don't have a story in mind for a sequel, but people have pitched me ideas, which is actually very funny that people take whatever they see in the film, even things that I hadn't intended that are for me are not in the story but are for people. So there are actually some very cool ideas from other people for a sequel, and I think a comic book would actually be the coolest thing to do, because yeah, or do that first and then maybe think about a sequel. But the big thing for me is it's not a franchise because the age of the protagonist and that particular protagonist is very important to me. The fact that he's 12 years old, it's a story about growing up, basically. So I don't see how that could continue, and I'm not as interested in the continuation of that. I don't see, to me, the antagonist and the protagonist are part of the same story. So as soon as one is gone, you don't have an interesting dynamic anymore. So I never saw it as a franchise starter or anything. It's his own story.
It's a standalone. That's very interesting. Okay, Julian, thank you very much indeed for your question. I'm going to move on to another question. This is from Eric. How would you feel about tackling an H.P. Lovecraft tale? Would you? Is that something that is that a mythology or a writer that interests you?
I'm late to the party when it comes to H.P. Lovecraft, but I recently befriended Richard Stanley, I'm a very, very big fan. He did, of course, he did Hardware, he did Dust Devil, and then he did he did a little bit of The Island of Dr. Moreau before getting fired. And I know he's working on The Color Out of Space as a film now, a Lovecraft story, but it's very hard to translate Lovecraft to the screen. I think Stuart Gordon did a very fun job with Reanimator, and that's a very fun film. I love it, but it doesn't have the Lovecraft atmosphere. So I think I'll wait and see what Richard does. I think if anyone can do it, it's Richard Stanley, because all these movies have these very trippy sequences. He's the right guy for the job. But I did recently see, because I heard Richard was going to do that, and I saw someone made a film in the 80s called The Curse, aka The Farm. It's the same story as the Color from Outer Space. It's a horrible movie, and it makes you feel disgusted in all the wrong ways. Yeah, it's got Will Wheaton in it, and it's, yeah, I don't recommend it. I think Lucio Fulci co-produced it, and it has some exploding cows and the most disgusting rotting food ever put on film. It's a weird film. So it's hard to do Lovecraft, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much indeed. We're actually at the end of our time. That is absolutely fascinating, Jonas. And I look forward to seeing. I want to see Tabula Rasa. That does. It sounds really, really interesting, and I'll look forward to seeing. And fingers crossed for heads will roll, etc. And I just wanted to thank everybody for joining in, for tuning in. Keep an eye out for stuff coming up for next week. Oh, next week, I must say, sorry, next week's show. I don't have a guest for next week's show, so what I would like to do is, and this is a suggestion that's come into me, and I've forgotten the name of the person who actually suggested it to me. I will make a note of this. But next week's show is going to be original versus sequel, not original versus remake. Original versus sequel. So I'm thinking in terms of Hellraiser and Hellbound, Nightmare on Elm Street, and we can cover sequels as you wish. But this is kind of one just for us. There's no guest. This is for anybody who wants to come on and join the show and share ideas and what makes a good sequel, particular sequels that exceed the originals. I know there are fans out there who far prefer Hellbound to Hellraiser and vice versa. And so on. So that's next week's show, original versus sequel. I'll be putting details of that up later in the week. So just really remains for me to thank Jonas and Julian for joining me. And I'm losing my voice. Jonas, would you like to say goodbye?
Just in time.
Yeah. Jonas, please say goodbye.
No, thank you very, very much for having me on.
It's my pleasure, and hopefully I'll get to see you again soon when you're in the UK.
I'm sure we will.
Cool, excellent. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Chattering with Nicholas Vince, and I've been chattering with Jonas Govaerts. Thank you very much indeed. Join me next week when we're going to be talking, as I say, original versus sequel. In the meantime, have a really nice rest of your Sunday.